Good evening, and thanks for joining us here in the Post Rock Extension District. We are back for the Ag Update for another week. My name is Sandra Wick. I am the Crop Production Agent with K-State Research and Extension, and hopefully you are all continuing to be safe and healthy. So I wanted to hop on just a little bit earlier tonight because, as you know, our governor is going to be making the announcement to reopen the state of Kansas at 6:30. So I assure you I will be done by 6:30, but wanted to provide you with some information to kind of let you know what I found, what was going on out there. So I wanted to give you an update on the wheat condition. You know, it's been 14 days since that last cold snap. So the big question out there is what's going on with the wheat. So last week I traveled around the district and looked at several different wheat fields. This week, a couple days, I traveled around and looked at the wheat. And, you know, there are some places that are still in need of some moisture. Up here, especially in the northern tier of the district, I don't know if you looked at the drought monitor map this week. We are in yellow, which means that we are some drought conditions up here. So we're really going to depend on Mother Nature to give us some moisture that is needed. So yes, the wheat will probably be later. Yes, it will probably be shorter, but like I said, Mother Nature is going to be the driving force on what happens from here on out. So how do you determine if there's been any injury to your wheat? So let's just review just a little bit about what we've talked about the last couple weeks. Remember, there are two main factors that go into determining the potential injury to your wheat. Number one, most important, is the stage of development of what that wheat was at. And number two is the temperature, which includes the degree and the duration of that temperature. So remember, the further along your temperature or the further along your wheat crop is, the higher potential that you're going to have some freeze injury to that. So the first thing you need to do is look at the symptoms of these plants. And I'm going to describe here some of the symptoms to look for. And I have a wheat plant setting here, but we're going to be showing you some more close-up pictures as well. The first thing you want to look at is if that wheat is putting on more growth. You know, we've had some places that have gotten moisture and warm temperatures. So if those two conditions are there, the wheat plant should start growing and putting on more growth if that wheat's alive. Okay, so we have a picture here that's going to show you what I'm talking about looking at. So what you need to do is look at the newest leaves that come out here, and that's that top leaf there that you see. If it is, whether it be the flag leaf or whether it be just the next leaf coming out there, if it's healthy, if it's green, if it's growing, then that's a pretty good indication that that plant is still alive and it's feeding that wheat head that's going to be moving up that stem. Then another thing that you look at is if you're a botanist, or maybe you want to actually take a wheat tiller here, or a tiller, and actually dissect that and cut that apart. And that's what I've been doing, is splitting these stems and trying to find that wheat head. And we're going to be showing you about 3 pictures here of the wheat heads that I found that are actually in good condition. So there's several different stages here that I found. And here's one of the developing wheat heads here. And this is a wheat plant that's pretty far along. And this would be in the southern part of the district. You know, that old wheat head is halfway up the stem by now. It's in really good condition there that you saw. It's green, and it's not white or discolored or tan. So it's in really good condition. And even the beards there on the top are not even white. Okay. The next picture here is just a little bit less developed. It might have just a little bit tannish color, but that could be the color too of the camera there. But as you can see, it's not as far along. But that's just a little bit further down into that stem. The last one here is a tinier picture. And this is similar to the wheat head that we had a picture of last week, but you can see that this is a really good condition, that even though it's a little whitish, that midriff line that goes right down the middle of that wheat head there is still green. And where the kernels are connecting, that is still green. So that is a good, viable wheat head that's going to continue to develop there. Now, as far as one that's damaged, and we're going to show you the picture right here. So as you can see, that's probably a little bit small. So it's a little bit shriveled there. If you look at the diameter of that stem, It should probably be a little bit bigger. Okay, and you can even see maybe some discoloration of the foliage around that as well. So, and even maybe a little discoloration in that head. So that is a damaged one there. Okay, so the tools that you need, and I showed these last week as well. You will need a 10 powered lens, especially for that last weed head that I showed you, because these are really, really hard to find, especially in the secondary tillers, which I'll be talking about that. That little wheat head that I showed you, that last picture, is only like a 16th of an inch long. It's really, really tiny. So you're going to need a little lens. The pictures that the camera that I use to take those pictures is a digital microscope, but this will work too, and you can see it with this. To split the stems, you're going to need an X-Acto knife or a razor blade or something like that. And like I said last week, the pocket knife will not work. It's going to be too thick. And I'm going to be quite honest with you, it's pretty tedious job to split these stems. As you know, these wheat plants aren't really in that good a condition. Okay, because number one, they've had some freeze injury to them, and number two, they're kind of drought stressed. So with that, it's hard to kind of split those stems. So you have to be very patient. It took me a while to split a lot of stems before you don't cut that weed head off. So you have to be very patient to do that. So let's take a look at the wheat fields, and we've got several pictures here that we're going to show you since I went around the district, and I kind of wanted to show you the wheat plots or the demonstration plots, because that allows me to look at many different varieties in these different areas. So the Osborne, and we have 4 demonstration plots. We have the Osborne plot is by Downs. The Jewell County plot is close to Jewell, Kansas. The Smith County plot is near Lebanon. And then the Mitchell County plot is south of Beloit. So as you can guess, there's lots of growth differences to these plots just because of the different locations that they are in. So we're going to start with the Jewell County plot, and we have a couple pictures here for you. We want to thank our cooperator, Calvin Bonert. He's been doing this for several years. This plot was planted on October 21st, and it was after soybeans. So as you realize, the majority of the wheat acreage here up here in north central Kansas is behind soybeans. So as you can see there, if you look really close, a lot of the primary tillers are brown, and they were either damaged or killed. So all the new growth that you see there are the secondary tillers. Okay, let's move to the Osborne County plot, and we want to cooperator, Brent Harsman. And this plot, I don't know if you remember, because we posted it on Twitter that day. This plot was planted on October 28th, and it was in snow flurries. So we were riding the drill out there. It wasn't very warm. As you can know, it's probably in the 20s or 30s, but it was in the snow. And as you can see real close there, all those primary tillers, it's brown on the bottom there. It was toast. Every growth that you see there is secondary tillers that you have that's grown out from that. And I believe that particular variety that you saw there was the mint. We have a couple other pictures, I believe, here that we're going to show you side by side, so you can see it a little bit closer there. See the bottom of the wheat plants there. They're all brown, so those would have been the primary tillers. So all the growth that you see there, the one on the top left, probably maybe isn't quite as thick there. The one on the bottom left or the bottom right there has a lot more tillers than the secondary tillers that are coming out of that wheat. So it's really going to be dependent on the moisture and what happens from here on out. Okay, we're going to move on to the Smith County plot. And this one is by Lebanon, and we want to thank cooperator Art Befford. This was planted, one of the first ones that was planted on October 15th. This too was behind soybeans. So definitely, if you look pretty close there, and we're going to be showing a video here, and the wind was blowing, but if you look pretty But I'll tell you what, in a week's time, you'd be amazed of what that plot looked like. We didn't get a lot of moisture up here, but there was some moisture down in the soil there. So as you can see, we took these videos yesterday. The wind was pretty howling, but that wheat has put on quite a bit of growth from last week to this week. So only time will tell what's going to happen with that. The last plot here is our Mitchell County plot, and this is one of the replicated K-State plots. What we mean by replication is each of the varieties were planted 4 different times in that specific area. The plot, each variety is not as large. They're probably 6.5 feet wide and about 25 feet long. Uh, but this allows us to do some replications and get some data in that regard. And this will be posted in the K-State Research and Extension performance data. But as you can see, there's quite a bit more growth on this particular plot, and not a lot of the secondary or the primary tillers were not really affected at that time. But it all depends on what stage of development that was at. You would think that if it was planted later, the stage of development wouldn't have been as far along. But what we're finding out is because of the limited growth and the later planting, there wasn't as much canopy for the later planted wheat. There wasn't as much insulation to that ground. If it was dry, it allowed that cold to kind of settle in around that crown and just kill some of those primary tillers. But we want to thank Marty Fletchaw. He has been a long-time cooperator for this particular plot. And that plot was planted by actually Dr. Lucas Haig from the Northwest region and his staff on October 25th. So it was one of the later planted plots too, but it's just got some of those timely rains. It got that inch to inch and a half last week. And in a week's time, when I was visiting with Marty, he said that plot turned around 180 degrees. So as you can see, you can be the best farmer, do the exact right things, but if Mother Nature doesn't cooperate, it doesn't matter. So we are very dependent on Mother Nature. Okay, so what does this all mean? Okay, as far as evaluating your wheat fields. Well, as I had said, I was really pleasantly surprised on how much that wheat had grown back in a week. You know, that wheat crop is pretty resilient. And I know I've said this time and time again, and my husband said that I say it too much, but wheat has 9 lives, and maybe even more than 9 lives. But if any crop is going to make a liar out of you, it can be wheat. You can say that it's not going to make anything, and then you leave your test strips, and then it might get 30 to 40 bushels. So it all depends on the moisture that we get. Getting those timely rains when we need to get it. Another thing we need to kind of think about is, you know, these wheat plants are going to be a little bit later. So we hope that we don't get some of that heat stress or the hot temperatures when that grain is trying to fill. So those are 2 pretty important components that we have to remember about. Okay. If you decide that, let's say, if the water spigot shuts off and you have to terminate your wheat crop, which we hope that doesn't happen, but the first thing that you want to think about, and we mentioned that last week, is your herbicide program that you use. This is definitely important because depending on what herbicide you use, there are very significant crop rotations depending on what you used. Whether it could have been an Ally, a Rave, an Olympus, any of those residual type herbicides. It can be anywhere from 4 to 10 months cropping rotation restrictions. As I mentioned last week, K-State Research and Extension has the 2020 Chemical Weed Control Booklet, which has an abbreviated label there for you that will provide for you those cropping restrictions. So make sure that you either pick up a copy of that online, or you can give us a call and we can arrange that for you to pick up one of these books as well. Another question that you want to ask yourself if you decide to terminate this wheat crop is if you have crop insurance. Be sure to check with your crop insurance agent before you terminate any crop. And I know that you guys are very well aware of that, especially if you are planning on planting a second crop to see what your coverage options are. If you don't have a residual herbicide, maybe you want to cut that wheat for some forage for your cattle. Maybe you want to graze it out, but you definitely will want to remember to test that for nitrates because that could be an issue as well. Maybe you want to plant a summer feed crop for your livestock, or maybe you want to just fallow it and plant in the fall. If you want some more information on some different options for you, the last K-State Research and Extension Agronomy newsletter provided extensive details on your options for that. If you would like to get a copy of that K-State Agronomy newsletter, sign up for our Ag Listserv, and I email those out weekly, or you can go call or text me, and I'll be glad to email that out to you as well. Lastly, some other things that are going on with the wheat. Diseases are starting to show up. If it's not one thing, it's another. I know that down in south central Kansas, stripe rust has started to show up in south central Kansas. So probably in the next couple weeks, you may want to start scouting for that. Here's a picture of striped rust. And it gets its name from the rust goes kind of in a stripe there. It rarely overwinters in Kansas, so we're very dependent on what's going on in Oklahoma and Texas and what can blow north up in here. So that's why we're very interested in knowing what's going on down there, and then it will move into southern Kansas, and it could move up to here. Some of the conditions that favor stripe rust is actually cool, humid temperatures. So like 50 to 60 degrees is where that disease can develop and to get some high populations in that regard. Okay, as far as stripe rust, the best effective control against it is planting resistant varieties. So, and I know a lot of you really take a lot of time to pick your wheat variety. So if you do decide to spray with a fungicide, you need to remember that your main goal is to protect that flag leaf here on your wheat plant. So the recommendation for spraying, if you do choose to use a fungicide, is to spray when that flag leaf is fully exposed out, because that is your main goal, is to protect that flag leaf. Most of the fungicides out on the market are going to last around that 21, 25 days. So that's why you want to wait until that flag leaf is fully extended for that. Lastly here, so we can get you out to listen to the governor, is alfalfa. I've had lots of calls on alfalfa, not only on the wheat. The alfalfa did not like the cold temperatures any more than the wheat did. Some of those alfalfa stands were burnt back to the crown. On top of that, we've had some weevil activity out there. So you need to get out there and scout that. If you need some information on that, K-State has an excellent an alfalfa insect management guide. This is available online or on our website. It goes through and tells you the thresholds to use and when it's warranted to spray that. It also lists some effective herbicides that are there for you as well. So I hope that I provided you some information to help you make some decisions on your crops out there. Please, if you have any questions, give me a call. Our offices are still manned, and so give us a call at any of those locations in Beloit, Lincoln, Mankato, Osborne, or Smith Center, or text me, email me. I love to get pictures from you. Since we are practicing social distancing right now, but hopefully, we can talk and visit here soon. So again, if you have any more questions, don't hesitate to give me a call. Go to our webpage. We have lots of information posted for you at www.postrock.ksu.edu. And I will see you later. Thank you for joining us.